Well, start by saying we are recording, and that's pertinent, right?
That is pertinent. Yes. Uh,
Um, so just before I tell you a little bit, I'll share a little bit about what happened last time. So Todd and I are both, I think, mutual fans of each other's channel, and we thought we'd really like to be able to do something where we collaborate, talk a little bit about music and things that, we like, and there's a lot of overlap and probably some stuff that's not maybe I don't know about that I might really like and vice versa. So we decided to set that all up. We had a recording on Monday, I guess, and I was very happy with it.
I was too, and it was a long one. I think it was probably, I don't know, hour and a half, probably.
Yeah.
Close to it.
Yeah. And we covered a lot of stuff. And one of the things we realized, I think, both of us, is that it's really fun when you're getting to know somebody, when you both have, mutual passions for music. And the thing that's different than in the real world is that we already know that there's a lot of music that we enjoy and share interest in. But we really don't know each other at all. So we're going to do it again, and we will may cover some of the same stuff, but we don't want to get stale. So just to be aware for anybody who's watching this, some of the things we, maybe covering off, we'll mention the previous recording that never did get posted, and that was user error on my side. So I'm looking forward to this session because I know we'll have more good stuff coming up.
Absolutely. Yeah, me too.
So we started around the same time. I think you were a little bit before me, but I remember as I was starting my channel and I didn't spend a lot of time watching channels. I think I saw Mazzy first. A friend sent me something and said, you should try this. And probably about a month or two of watching that. And then I just decided to give it a go. And obviously looking at other channels for both inspiration and for just enjoyment. And came across yours. And one of the first posts I saw was that I really enjoyed of yours was um, the Boss versus Springsteen.
I remember that was one of the first videos I ever did. Yeah. I recorded a lot of those videos probably 4 or 5 months before I posted them. And I was
Interesting.
practicing, I guess. And then finally, I was just like, I'm going to do this. But yeah, that was definitely an early one and something I definitely am passionate about, the Boss versus Springsteen. I definitely have my own taste and my own views on that. But yeah.
Well, the timing was good as well because I was getting into Springsteen's Western Stars and kind of non-E Street Band stuff and really loving that. And my history going back with Springsteen goes right back to seeing him on the Born to Run tour. So it's one of the benefits of
Wow.
being an old man is, sort of walking into that world, which was amazing. But I do find that the Boss does kind of all the trappings of the Boss I'm kind of tired of that persona, and he even admits that he's kind of created that persona, the whole thing about the cars, and he's not really into cars, and so
Yeah, I mean, I like a good rock record, and I definitely like some of his more rock stuff for sure. But I get a little tired of the 1, 2, 3, 4 every single time, and some of the moves and concert and the just larger than life kind of persona that he has. It's funny when I saw him, the first time I saw him was on the Tom Joad tour. So it's the same place that I graduated college, Northrop Auditorium in Minneapolis, and I had probably 10th row tickets and it just felt so amazing to be there. I mean, it's a small place and I'd never seen him and I fell in love with the storyteller part of it and the songs, you get tastes of that, of course, anytime you see him live, but it seemed like he was really doing on that tour. But one of the things I'll always remember is he said early on, there'll be none of that born in the USA bullshit here tonight. And I took it to mean exactly, kind of what we're talking about a little bit, but
that's
yeah.
cool. So that was your first experience of Springsteen.
Yeah, first live, yes. Yeah.
And tell me, what was your experience of an interest in Springsteen leading up to that show? What records were you listening to and for how long? That kind of.
I mean, I was like 12 when Born in the USA was absolutely everywhere. You could not escape it. And I was kind of annoyed by it at first. It didn't really appeal to me much. I guess maybe by the sixth single and I'm on fire, I was kind of like, this is sort of cool. And I started to like it more. And I got a dubbed copy of Born to Run and but it really, for me, what really did it was maybe a year and a half later, when that live 75, 85 record came out. I was starting to get into it more, and I got that for Christmas, and I just fell in love with the storytelling, fell in love with those. more intimate moments, the storytelling he has leading up to the river song, the version of Thunder Road, the very first song on there. And so then it kind of went from there. And I think I bought Tunnel of Love the day it came out and just sort of I think I discovered Nebraska right around the time of Tom Joad, and then I saw him right afterwards. So that whole side of him was really opening up to me at that time.
What would have been roughly the time period between like hearing the live in New York City and Nebraska? Like how long were you
The
consuming
live
like really?
75, 85
Yeah.
Nebraska. Honestly, it might have been 9 years. I mean, I
Okay.
didn't know Nebraska, and I think I discovered Nebraska after Tom Joad. I got into Tom Joad, and I was like, "Oh my God!" And then I was getting compared to Nebraska, and then I fell in love with Nebraska. It's one of my favorite albums of all time. So it's just absolutely amazing to see him right on top of all that, right after discovering all these two records in particular. And I'd also really like Ton of Love. Like I just like that other side of him that's not, I guess, the stereotypical like E Street Band kind of record.
I mean, it's interesting too because so did you buy Tunnel of Love when it came out, or was that, yeah, okay. I always think it's interesting when you go back and or you get something that's from before versus experiencing kind of the narrative arc of an artist putting out a series of records and what's going on with their life and everything. Because you probably knew this, but maybe because you were quite young, that the Walk Like a Man, that's when he was breaking up with his wife, right?
Yeah, I mean it's like one of the most honest relationship records, all sides of it that probably exists, you know. Yeah, everybody thought he was in domestic bliss, but there were cracks in the foundation. And I think that was a tour too that he really fell in love with Patty. So
Yeah, and I remember just thinking, like, yeah, there was a vulnerability. The grandiosity was kind of muted by the vulnerability of a relationship that had gone bad. That song, Walk Like a Man, always just like really hits me over the head. I find that a very powerful song.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, for me, it's the one that I always think of the most is probably One Step Up. Yeah, just that the intimacy of that. Of course, the big hits off of it. Also, what is the one that he did with Tougher Than the Rest? That
Yeah,
gets me every time.
yeah.
And Springsteen on Broadway, I was lucky enough to see that. And that's when, and on a Netflix version too, that's when Patty comes out and sings with him. And if you know the story and you know that they fell in love on that tour and that was the
Mm,
new material at the time, it's like, it's pretty powerful stuff. So, yeah.
that's cool. So yeah, that's the beginnings of our this will be probably a typical tangent kind of thing. We started with how I first started watching your channel and really enjoying it. And that was the first episode, and I've been a big fan of yours ever since. And I think one of the things I like about your channel is your storytelling and sort of your personal interaction with the music. So, one extreme is people show, I bought this record, this is really good, and yours, you take more time to talk about the how the music impacted you, why it felt important, and all of that. And I think that's something that for me I really enjoy, and I don't see a ton of that in the way that you do it. Anyways, I just tip my hat to you. I think you have a
Oh,
really
thank
good
you.
channel.
Yeah. I mean, I think you do a really good job of that as well. I mean, it's for me, it's the people more than the absolutely 110% more than like the record collection.
Yeah,
It's the people, their personality, getting to kind of know them, finding out, their sense of humor, how they present things,
yeah.
context, and how old were they when they discovered bands? Because I feel like that makes such a difference too. If you get into, you know, I find that most people's favorite record by a band tends to be the one that they first got into, or maybe the second. But yeah, I love your stories. I'm always curious about what you have on the wall. I'm always kind of seems like really cool stuff. And yeah.
Yeah, well, thank you. Actually, to sort of piggyback on that, I was thinking, I'd love to hear more about how you listen to music. We sort of started to touch on that last time, and I'd like to talk about that more. I'll just share with you before I ask you that question directly, or I guess I already have, and you can answer it. But when my wife and I bought this house, we had one extra bedroom, and we had a conversation about what we do with that bedroom. and it's kind of a guest room, but ultimately who's using it, day in and day out, right? And my
Yeah.
wife wanted
Yeah.
her own sort of separate office and kind of a studio where she can, sew and do some of the crafts that she likes to do. And so I said, I'd like to take the living room because I knew it had good acoustics. And
Mm.
God love her. She basically has allowed me to sort of create my listening room there. The walls are all full of those posters on all sort of sides of it. I guess three of the four sides. It goes into the dining room, and so there's less of it in the
I can
dining
see
room.
that a lot of times. Yeah.
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 There's sort of some transition stuff like a picture of Elvis Presley, but it's more about the Museum of Modern Art, or I can't remember, or the Whitney. But
Yeah.
anyways, um, and I sit down on that chair. I can spin the chair in one direction. I can spin it so I'm looking at a palm tree and looking out the window, and there's just a wall of bamboo. And even though we live very close to downtown Vancouver, it feels very green and very sort of away from urban. And I love that feeling of being away, but not really being away. I like to be close to things. And I'll just crank the tunes. And one of my
Oh,
things is when
nice.
Mari goes off and does her workouts. I'll have an hour and a half to 2 hours where I can play stuff and play it really loud. And she's wonderful even other times where she'll just go upstairs into her studio and I'll sit downstairs and really listen to music closely. And I'm not a big headphones guy. I like to feel the music in my bones, as it were. So only if I really feel that I need to listen to something late at night and I need to be quiet, do I do that. So tell me a little bit about your listening, not just at home, but how you listen to music.
Sure. I mean, at home, we have when we moved into this place, I'm lucky. My partner is as into music as I am, and that has certainly not been the case for other people that I've dated in my life. And we, it's interesting too because our record collections do not really overlap much at all, which is kind of crazy. But yet we have a lot of like I like the stuff she's into, she likes the stuff I'm into. I've said it, I think before. She goes wide, I tend to go like a little bit more narrow and deeper. But we have like when we first moved in, we wanted to have a record room, but kind of quickly realized that it wasn't really working. It's too open. You can't close the door or anything. So we have all of our records on a wall. When you first walk in, it's kind of the first thing you see is this big wall. Once in a while, I'll do a video in front of it. It's just kind of a hallway, so it's a little uncomfortable to set myself up there. Also, I don't know, I'm kind of private. I like to have, at least close the door and kind of have my own space when I'm doing videos. But that's where the living room downstairs is where we have our main listening room, I guess, where the nice stereo is. And yeah, I'm not sure the acoustics are that great down there. I think the next place that we move to, I think we'll probably be more mindful of that. But they're good. I mean, it sounds great. And that's really where I'll try to do like a dedicated listen. If I get something on vinyl, especially if I'm really excited about it, I'll go down there and really sit between the two speakers and try to really like listen to it, probably reading the lyrics and looking at the liner notes and all that stuff too. But I discover music in I guess, a variety of different ways. Lately, it's been, the VC or people that do these videos, or people that comment on mine that suggest things. But I'm certainly not against streaming, and I use it quite a bit. Definitely in the car. I have a digital analog converter downstairs and up here, actually, in my office. And so I'll plug things directly in to try to get like a really good sound out of it. But I find that that's how I discover a lot of music. If I really like it, I'll end up probably purchasing it. I do have a turntable up here too. Up here, I mean my office where I work, but also I've got this little corner here where I set things up. And originally I was by a window in the same room, and then I moved it over here, and I'm constantly trying to figure out something that I can just have set up, and I don't have to like rearrange it every time.
Hmm.
But yeah, I guess I listen to music to answer your questions. Yeah, a variety of ways. A lot of times I'll have it on in here while I'm working. But sometimes just nature of what I do, it's hard to have music on. It has too many lyrics to it. So sometimes I'll listen to more ambient music, or I tend to forget about playlists. When I have something like Apple Music on and it starts to shuffle through other songs, I find that I really enjoy that. But I just don't take advantage of it as much as I probably should. But There's nothing to me like a dedicated listen when you're in between two speakers and you're just like really listening and you're focused
Absolutely.
your attention on it and your mind's not drifting, on other things too
Right,
much.
but it is so interesting because we talked about this last time. Different situations call for different either listening mediums, but also how you listen, right? There's the deep listen, but the deep listen, what makes it so great is that you are focused and listening to it deeply. The downside is there's for me at least no multitasking really, and you're not getting anything done. So like 4 hours of deep listening would be quite a hit on the day's schedule.
Absolutely. And I mean, music hits me in different ways at different times. Sometimes even if I'm having deep listening session to something, it won't hit me the way it might 2, 3 months later or 5 years later.
Mm.
But yeah, I think that is, yeah, it's not something you can do all day long. I think it'd be kind of fatiguing if you did, but it's such a nice, I think vinyl in general, the physicality of it, the sleeves, the design, the fact that you're holding something that's larger, and it requires a flipping of size makes it a little bit more difficult to do other things, to multitask or get lost in another task anyway. So yeah, I really like treating it with respect sometimes and just really sitting down and listening to
Mm.
something. Not, I think a lot of things these days just too much is a kind of oral wallpaper, at least to my ears. So it's
Mhm.
nice to actively listen.
So you stream in part because it's convenient and but also it sounds like to evaluate whether it's maybe something that you might want to buy on vinyl if it's really
Yeah,
special.
I don't have a budget to go out and buy everything that I want to hear on vinyl. But yeah, so a lot of times, and I feel like, in some ways, music, I look at my favorite bands that I got into early on. It's usually, of course, you had to buy stuff back then if you want to hear it, or you could dub it off a friend, I guess. Or as we got it later on, I remember getting just entire dumps of MP3s off of a hard drive.
Mm.
But I do think there's something about when you purchase something, like you're gonna make yourself like it. A lot of times
Mm.
you're like, okay, I've invested in this thing. Come on, I'm gonna play it again. I have to. There's got to be something that I really like in here. And some of my favorite albums are like that for me. Are records that I just stuck with and played and played and played.
Um, you, I think, had mentioned that you lost a lot of CDs in a flood, and I'm curious whether you ever purchase CDs anymore or those days are over.
It's interesting. Like I had a lot of CDs. I would buy vinyl, but used mostly. And I was lucky, I guess, in the mid '90s to buy a lot of used vinyl. Like that was my way to get all the Bob Dylan. That was my way to get all the Rolling Stones, all the Beatles, all that stuff. But I wasn't really buying a handful of stuff I couldn't get. Maybe they didn't have it on CD or they're sold out. I bought on vinyl. But it really wasn't until probably about 10 years ago that I upgraded my turntable, noticed the difference, like huge difference, and then started like buying vinyl. I've said it before. I don't know if I would be buying vinyl as a medium if we didn't have high streaming as a backup. Although I'm losing that a little bit more, high definition streaming, just because for the longest time there I would get kind of subpar pressings of new stuff. But yeah, I lost not all my CDs. I lost several CDs, the packaging in a flood of in Las Vegas. People don't think it rains there. It does. And the sewage system is not built to handle rain. It doesn't seep into the ground, so it goes everywhere and causes some flash flooding. I thought my stuff was inside and like, I paid this company. I was living in Minneapolis and had left Las Vegas, and they call me one day and tell me that they had a huge flood and I lost quite a bit of stuff. But yeah, the CDs I had to throw away the packaging on an awful lot of them and I just stacked them up, kind of on a spool that you would get like CDRs. But then when I was moving to Seattle, I don't know if it's pandemic and the times and who was in my life at the time, but I kind of thought that my interest in music might be waning, as far as the physicality. Also, again, this is getting to be a long-winded answer, but when I moved to Oakland, California in 2016, it was the first time because I had a pretty small apartment. I put all of my CDs in the closet, back in the closet. So you had to move a couple boxes to get to them. I remember saying in a year, if I didn't get them out and play them, I would get rid of them all. I lived there for 4 years. I think I pulled out one CD. It just became so easy just to pull it up on your computer, go to Wikipedia, go to All Music, do your research there. Also, I think for me, a lot of CDs that I was buying were starting to get really crappy with the packaging, just like a single little card with almost no information. So to answer your question, when I was moving here, I decided to purge all my CDs. I decided to get rid of all of them. And I got a little obsessed with it. This part I really regret. I really regret. I don't regret getting rid of Morrissey records like Kill Uncle that I was never CDs I was never ever going to play again. And there's that hand I just pulled that out of the top of my head, but there's a number of them, right? That I just had from the early 90s. I was never going to play them again. But what I do regret is getting rid of like the Bob Dylan SACD box, which Mazzy brought up recently. I'm like, I had that, and I think I pretty much gave it away
Wow.
because Amoeba would only buy so much, and a couple friends bought stuff, but I just wanted it gone. I just didn't want any CDs. I didn't want like a single one. I got kind of obsessed with it. Fortunately, all of them that I lost in the fire, lost everything, saved everything but the packaging, had to throw away all the packaging. I found those. I still have those. So I have spools of stuff that I'll grab once in a while and like on a road trip or put in the car because my car stereo does sound pretty good when it's got a CD in it. But to answer your question, I don't buy CDs and I don't think I ever will. Um, I'm just not interested in it. If streaming completely went away and it was a cheap alternative to sometimes a very high price of buying vinyl, I would probably do it. But as long as we have high quality streaming and vinyl, for me, I just don't see the reason to buy them. But yeah. What about you? Do you ever buy CDs?
Uh, Not often, but occasionally. I'll like when I think about the stuff that I've got recently, it would be forays into something that either the vinyl doesn't exist or it's super rare and I don't want to be spending a lot of money. I'll just give you a couple examples. There's a Fairport Convention compilation that is really cool and it's got some live stuff on it. And I don't even know if it's on vinyl or not, but if it is, it's too expensive. John Fahey, I'm just sort of starting to go into his discography, and there's a double CD compilation of his stuff. I do ask myself, like, why am I not just listening to this? It's available on the streaming services, but it comes with a book, and I want to just be able to sit there and read about him
Right.
and all the
Yeah.
logic about I could read about it on Wikipedia and everything is 100% valid. I use these kinds of compilations, and that's mostly what I'm spending, or if I'm getting it on CD, as a decision as to whether I'm going to buy the vinyl. So it's sort of like if it's a cheap alternative. I'll give you a couple examples. The Fleetwood Mac collection, which was about 50 bucks Canadian, which is about 25 bucks American, a little more. It's got all of their early stuff like Peter Green, like all before Rumors and Fleetwood Mac and the Stevie Nicks, Lindsey Buckingham stuff. The other one I got, I thought I'd show you because I know that you guys, when you did your video recently with Mazzy and your partner and Chris, I think it is. You were talking about Bert Jansch, and I've been going through a big Bert Jansch kind of thing. And this is his, band beforehand, his Pentangle. And
Oh,
this is a
wow. Okay.
box of Pentangle stuff. This also was about 50 bucks and it's got a nice booklet to it and all that. Interesting thing is, I'm really enjoying Pentangle, and so they're actually putting this out as a box of records, and I have to decide, am I going to buy individual ones, assuming that they're going to be releasing them individually, or am I going to spend a shitload of money, which I really shouldn't, on getting the whole box and just having that collection?
Well, that's another thing. I mean, yeah, if it's a box set and that's only available that way, I would probably maybe consider CDs. But, I've noticed too that a lot of these, like Dylan, right? Like a lot like the complete 1974 thing is only available on CD. Or I think maybe the some of them like the maybe it's Blood on the Tracks, more blood, more tracks. There's some of these super deluxe where there's and maybe it was the one for Time Out of Mind where it's got like there's six CDs worth, but then you get like four vinyl records. Like
Right.
it's never you don't get it all unless you get it on CD.
You can get it all.
You
It's
can?
just insanely expensive. I got that one, the Fragments one, and it's
Oh, maybe that's a bad example, but like
no,
some
but
of
you're right. I think, yeah,
yeah. But honestly for that, I don't know. I sometimes I feel like vinyl's not the right medium for some of this stuff either. It like the Bob Dylan one was it the Cutting Edge that if you
Hmm.
bought it on vinyl or CD, you could buy the whole version that had every single thing he ever did between
Yeah,
Bring It All Back Home and Blonde on Blonde. I don't need to hear take after take after take of the same song over and over to drive me nuts.
yeah,
That to me is a benefit of CDs or streaming because you can at least easily skip around,
totally.
and something like that. But yeah.
Yeah, no, it's very true. Want to show a record or two?
Yeah, I do. But we
Let's do
have to
that on the
change the
second part.
tape. We have to change the
Change
tape.
the tape. That's right.
Yes.
Exactly. And I think this
Good news,
is,
Zoom.
it doesn't tell me when it's running out in 1 minute and 36 seconds, 35. So this is a good time. Why don't we wrap this up and maybe take 10 and then we'll start the thing up again.
Sounds good.
So
Sounds
why
good.
don't we jump for your and my benefit? It's now 3:45. Why don't we jump back on at 3:55? Does that give you enough time?
Perfect. Yeah, we'll show
Okay.
some records
Show some
and
records.
okay, cool.
Okay.
All right,
See you
talk
in a
to you in a
bit.
few.
Yeah. Bye.